What if I told you that the wealthy, confident, and fulfilled version of you isn't in the future, but already exists right now? And what if the only reason you haven't met them is because you've never dared to live as them? It was the winter of 1952 when I found myself in a place I never thought I'd be again, completely broke. I had traveled too far, trusted too many, and ended up in a cold apartment with nothing but my thoughts. But it was there, precisely in that moment, that I remembered the teaching, live in the end, not in the need, not in the lack, but in the end. I stood before a mirror and imagined, not with hope, but with certainty, that I already was the man I desired to be, wealthy, calm, assured. I spoke not to the mirror, but through it. And in that moment, I became him. The outer world didn't shift overnight, but my state did. And once the state changes, the world has no choice but to follow. To live in the end is to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. You must no longer desire to be rich. You must be rich in consciousness. Not tomorrow, not later. Now. The moment you assume the identity of one who already possesses wealth, you align with the version of you that has already achieved it. This version already exists, not in some distant realm, but in your imagination. The outer world is not the cause, it is the effect. Your inner state of being writes the code of your experiences. You do not manifest what you want, you manifest what you are conscious of being. When you embrace the consciousness of wealth, reality reconfigures to match that blueprint. It is not theory, it is law. You are told to visualize, not because it's a trick, but because imagination is God in action. The world of senses may say you're poor, but your imagination knows you are rich. And if you persist in that inner vision, the senses must bow. That which you hold in imagination and nourish with feeling becomes inevitable in the outer world. Do not ask if it is real. Ask if you have accepted it as real. That is the law of assumption. When you assume something without doubt, you move mountains. Facts are flexible in the presence of deep conviction. You are not here to fight the facts, but to replace them with your assumptions until the facts align. Wealth is not a condition, it is an identity. You do not attract wealth, you attract life through the lens of being wealthy. If you walk as the rich version of yourself, talking, feeling, expecting as they do, you have already crossed into that reality. All transformation begins with self-definition. You must dare to call yourself rich before the world does. Do not look to time to confirm your manifestation. The rich version of you already exists now. Time only delays that which you refuse to claim. In this moment, if you feel it real, you collapse the idea of waiting. Time bends to states, and when you fully enter the state of wealth, the outer timeline reshapes itself accordingly. You will be tempted to check the bank account, listen to opinions, or return to your old story. Resist that. Persist in the assumption, no matter how contrary the evidence. Reality is obedient. It must conform to the dominant state. So persist, and soon what was once invisible becomes undeniably physical. What you are living now is not the present, it is the echo of a former state. The moment you shift your state, you shift the trajectory of your life. The rich version of you does not worry, beg, or chase. They walk knowing. They give thanks before receiving. And it is this version of you that is always waiting to be claimed. To assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled is to stand in the center of your own creative power. It is not simply daydreaming or wishful thinking. It is an act of faith, not in some external deity, but in the unseen substance of your own consciousness. When one is instructed to live in the end, it is not an invitation to fantasize idly, but a directive to move into the psychological position of already having received that which you seek. You do not wait for a sign, you do not wait for permission, and you do not wait for evidence. You dare to claim it now. Right here within your inner world, you must accept the reality of the thing desired as though it were already accomplished. Now, many people make the mistake of living in the hope of becoming rich. They say, I want to be wealthy, and they wait for circumstances to justify that shift in identity. But wanting is the confession of lack. It is the vibration of separation. The true creative act is not to want, but to be. You must move mentally and emotionally into the consciousness of already being rich. Not one day in the future, not someday when the job lands or the opportunity appears. But now, in this present moment, you must assume the identity of the one who has already received. This assumption is not make-believe, it is the very substance of creation. All things exist in the now, and it is by your inner acceptance that you select which reality unfolds in time. If you walk as the rich version of yourself, you shift from a frequency of waiting to a frequency of possessing. You eat as they would eat. You sleep as they would sleep. You speak with their confidence, not as pretense, but as reality. This is not lying to yourself. This is telling the truth to a world that is not yet caught up. The world outside is a mirror that reflects only what you have accepted within. If you walk with the consciousness of poverty, even the wealthiest opportunity will escape you, for you will unconsciously reject it. But if you embody wealth in your feeling, in your imagination, and in your emotional tone, the world will bow to that tone. The rich version of you is not a fantasy. It is a living reality now, waiting for your recognition. The bridge between your present experience and your desired reality is made of assumptions, and every assumption is a seed that must bear fruit. To assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled is to bypass the senses. Your current conditions may scream contradiction. The bank account may be empty, the bills may be due, yet within you cultivate a peace and joy that does not come from money but from the certainty of being. This inner knowing is the cause. Money is the effect. When you assume the identity of a wealthy individual, the world begins to organize itself to make that inner conviction. This is why you must feel it real. Not just think it, but feel it in the very cells of your body. How does it feel to have already arrived? Not to be on your way, but to be there already. That feeling, when sustained, is the magnet of miracles. It is not effort that makes things happen. It is alignment. And alignment is nothing more than inner agreement with the version of you that already possesses what you seek. So the first act is always assumption. Before the plan, before the strategy, before the external action, you must internalize the end. Live in the psychological end of your dream. Make your conversations reflect it. Make your inner dialogue echo it. Let your imagination be the only truth you trust. And let your body follow that truth. If you were already rich, how would you sit? How would you walk? What would you tolerate? What would you no longer chase? This assumption is not forced. It is gentle but firm. It is a decision to no longer identify with the old man, the one who strives, begs, and doubts. You let him go. And in his place stands a new man, one who knows that he has already received. The world may not see it yet, but you do. And that sight is the only one that matters, because in the world of imagination, the unseen is more real than the seen. It is from the unseen that all things emerge. You do not argue with facts. You do not fight appearances. You replace them. The assumption of the wish fulfilled is the beginning of all true manifestation. It is not an effort of the will, but a surrender to a deeper reality. It is stepping into the current of that which already is. In that place, there is no striving, no convincing, no chasing. There is only being. You are not waiting to be rich. You are remembering that you already are. This is the truth. And it is your acceptance of this truth that changes the world around you. When you no longer seek, but simply are, the universe reflects your being with exact precision. That is the law. That is the key. That is how the rich version of you, which already exists, becomes visible to all. The world you see outside is not solid, final, or causative. It is reactive. It is not the origin of your life experience, but the mirror of your inner state. You are not reacting to life. Life is reacting to you. This is one of the greatest revelations that can ever dawn upon the mind of man. The outer world is a projection of inner convictions, deeply rooted assumptions, and persistent self-definitions. All that you touch, taste, and encounter is the shadow cast by the light of your consciousness. You do not move the world by pushing against it. You move the world by changing your concept of self. That is the lever. Your inner world is the blueprint. Your outer world is the construction. When a man insists upon changing his bank balance, his job, or his circumstances without first changing his internal structure, he fights shadows. He tries to rearrange effects while leaving causes untouched. This is why so many struggle for so long. They try to master appearances while leaving their inner world in disorder. If you wish to be rich, do not concern yourself with how it will come. That is not your job. Your responsibility is to inhabit the identity of one who is already rich and to let the world catch up to your belief. Do not ask how it will unfold. Ask instead, am I living as the version of myself who already has what I desire? If the answer is no, then you must not expect the world to confirm what you have not accepted. The inner world must always lead and the outer must follow. This is not philosophy. It is law. There is no exception to it. If you would change your world, you must change your inner atmosphere. This is why some men attract abundance without effort, while others labor endlessly and reap dust. It is not their intelligence nor their talent. It is their inner acceptance of wealth. They have made peace with being rich. They have married that identity in their heart, and the world has no choice but to arrange itself around that self-concept. Everything begins in the unseen. Even the body you wear, the home you live in, the car you drive, each began as a thought, a picture in the imagination, silently nourished until it took form. Your entire reality functions on this principle. So why then would your wealth be any different? You must stop treating the external as the real world and begin recognizing your mind as the workshop of all creation. When you begin to take your inner state seriously, the world becomes malleable. You no longer chase after things, they come to you. You do not manipulate others, you align with your higher self, and all things are drawn to serve your vision. When you believe you are rich and persist in that feeling, not arrogantly, but naturally, the world begins to produce wealth-bearing channels. New opportunities emerge, old limitations vanish. People respond differently. Even chance encounters begin to carry the fragrance of prosperity. This is not imagination run wild. This is disciplined, intentional living from the end. Your inner world is not some private escape. It is the birthplace of everything you will ever experience. You are not observing a world that is separate from you. You are participating in a reflection of your own essence. This is why two men can walk into the same room and have two entirely different experiences, because they bring different inner atmospheres into that room. If you go into a meeting feeling poor, small, or uncertain, the world will reflect that vibration. If you enter the same room embodying the calm, secure, and powerful presence of someone who is already wealthy, the energy shifts. And this shift is not mystical. It is deeply practical. People sense what you believe about yourself. Circumstances conform to it. Events are drawn to confirm it. The world is a living echo, and it repeats the tone you consistently strike within. Your only job then is to tend to that tone. Don't ask whether it is working. Stay faithful to your assumption. The world will take its time, but it will bend. And when it does, you will not be surprised. You will know it was never outside of you to begin with. It was your consciousness that built it, brick by brick, belief by belief. If you walk in the state of wealth long enough and sincerely enough, the entire fabric of your life will shift to match it. This is why inner alignment is the master key. The way you feel about yourself determines what reality delivers to your door. If you want a different life, change the blueprint. Stop observing and begin selecting. Stop reacting and start assuming. Your identity is your world, and when you change your idea of self, your entire world moves accordingly. The outer world is clay. Your inner world is the potter, and you have been shaping your destiny all along, not with effort, but with belief. Imagination is the only reality. This is not poetic sentiment. It is not an abstract metaphor for creativity or hope. It is literal. What you call the world, your finances, relationships, health, and environment, is nothing more than an expression of your imaginative activity, whether conscious or unconscious. That which you imagine, feel, and persist in emotionally becomes what you will eventually see and touch. Your reality is your imagination clothed in form. Now consider this. There is no external source of power shaping your life. There is only imagination, moving through you, acting as you, producing the visible from the invisible. Every circumstance that has ever come to you, favorable or otherwise, was first accepted in imagination. Whether you gave consent deliberately or allowed it passively, imagination took your inner conversations and assumptions and crystallized them into physical events. Most people live under the illusion that imagination is merely a tool for fantasy or entertainment. They believe their thoughts are private and inconsequential, as though what happens in the mind stays in the mind. But your imagination is not a private playground. It is a divine workshop. Every scene you rehearse, every internal drama you indulge in, every conversation you replay is shaping your tomorrow. And the richer the emotion involved, the more quickly it will be externalized. To use imagination deliberately is to begin to master life. When you imagine something with feeling and conviction, you are stepping into the generative center of your being. You are no longer a victim of circumstance. You are a conscious participant in the unfolding of your destiny. There is nothing too grand, too difficult, or too distant for imagination to reach. If you can imagine it and remain loyal to it in feeling, the universe will align to bring it forth. Wealth, therefore, does not begin with hard work. It does not begin with strategy. It begins with imaginative assumption. If you desire to be rich, you must first become rich in imagination, not just in image, but in feeling. You must sit in silence and construct in your mind the scene that would imply your wish is fulfilled. See it, touch it, smell it, feel the leather of the seat in your new car, hear the sound of the bank door closing as you walk out smiling. Taste the coffee in your luxury apartment. These are not idle games. These are creative acts. The power is not in the scene alone, but in your emotional acceptance of it as real. This is what separates passive dreaming from living in the end. One is hope, the other is knowing. And it is only through knowing that manifestation occurs. You must accept the reality of your imagined scene with such intensity that the outer world becomes irrelevant. In that moment, you are rich, not because the world says so, but because you have said so within. This is not denial of current facts. It is transcendence. It is seeing beyond appearances and choosing to live in the realm of causation. You are not lying to yourself. You are telling the truth ahead of its time. For every visible thing first existed as an invisible idea. The unseen always precedes the seen. And imagination is the gateway through which the unseen enters the visible. The rich version of you already exists in imagination, not as a potential, but as a reality. And it waits, not in the future, but in the now for your recognition. Every time you imagine yourself with a sense of fulfillment, you are aligning with that version of yourself. Each time you refuse to return to doubt, you reinforce that alignment. You are not climbing a ladder toward wealth. You are stepping sideways into a version of yourself where wealth already is. Imagination does not take time, it takes attention. The moment you fully accept the end, the path begins to unfold. And the more you persist in the assumption, the more quickly the facts rearrange to match. But the facts do not come first. The facts are the echo. The image is the sound. You must hold the image steadily, regardless of what your senses report, and trust that what you feel in imagination will solidify in experience. Many will say, I've imagined, but nothing happened. And the answer is always the same. You did not remain faithful. You allowed the evidence of the senses to pull you back into doubt. You look for confirmation too soon. You question the process. But imagination does not work by questioning. It works by conviction. Once you have seen it clearly within, you must act, speak, and feel as though it were already so. And the world, though it may seem stubborn at first, will eventually yield. You are always imagining. The question is not whether you are using imagination, but how. Are you imagining wealth or struggle? Are you rehearsing success or defeat? Are you building scenes of abundance or scenarios of loss? Your life is simply the harvest of what you've been imagining consistently. If you want to know what you've believed, look around you. If you want to change what's around you, change what you believe. And imagination is the tool to do it. When you begin to take your imagination seriously, the world becomes light in your hands. You do not need to force it. You only need to imagine and feel until it becomes natural. Once the inner state becomes natural, the outer world must obey. That is the truth. That is the law. And it is always faithful. When you assume something to be true, regardless of present facts or appearances, you set into motion a cause so powerful, so precise, that the universe must respond in kind. This is the law, not a law invented by man, but a law embedded into the structure of being itself. It is the law of assumption. And it works whether you understand it or not, whether you believe in it or not. You are using it right now. The only question is, what are you assuming? Assumption is creation. It is not a prelude to action. It is the very substance of action. All that follows in your life, decisions, encounters, circumstances, flows downstream from the assumption you carry. If you assume poverty, no amount of work will release you from it, because your labor will express the identity of the poor. If you assume wealth, even your stillness will express the vibration of possession. Most people live in reaction to facts. They believe what their senses tell them and base their identity on evidence. They say, I cannot believe I am wealthy because my finances say otherwise. They wait for proof before they believe, but by then it is too late. Belief must come first. The law of assumption teaches you to claim that which is not yet visible as though it were already so, not as a lie, but as a higher truth that is yet to unfold. You override facts by remaining faithful to your inner assumption. Faithfulness is not shouting affirmations into the void. It is quiet, unwavering inner knowing. It is the feeling of already being what you seek despite the contradictions. You assume it is done, and because you do, it becomes. The assumption becomes the bridge of incidents, the unseen pathway from what was to what is now unfolding. No event happens outside the framework of your dominant assumption. This law does not require physical effort, but it demands inner discipline. You must stop checking for signs. You must stop doubting the process when circumstances contradict your desire. The moment you begin to question, you break the thread. But if you can persist, if you can hold the assumption through silence and stillness and the noise of outer denial, then the law will unfold in the only way it knows how, perfectly. Assumption is not fantasy. It is not imagination without direction. It is the conscious selection of a state and the deliberate occupancy of that state until it becomes natural. When you live from a place of I am already wealthy, you do not need to manipulate events. The world begins to reflect that consciousness. Doors open where there were walls. People respond in ways that they never did before. You become magnetic, not because you are trying to attract, but because you are simply being. The law does not care what you assume. It brings to life whatever you give to it. If you assume lack, it will bring lack. If you assume rejection, it will bring people to play that role. If you assume abundance, it will call forth circumstances, events, and individuals who mirror that richness back to you. The law is always faithful to your belief. There is no power greater than sustained inner conviction. You may not know how things will happen. You may not see the path, but you are not required to. Your work is not to figure out the mechanics. Your work is to maintain the state. The state of being is the cause. The world of form is the effect. Do not confuse the shadow with the source. All that you see is the echo of an old assumption. If you want to change the echo, change the tone. What makes the law of assumption so misunderstood is that it appears too simple. We are conditioned to believe in effort, in struggle, in performance. But this law asks you to believe without proof, to feel before you see, to act not from what is, but from what you have chosen to assume as true. This offends the rational mind. It disrupts the habit of waiting, but it is in that disruption that freedom begins. To master this law is to stand in the silence of your room and declare, "It is done," not with desperation, but with certainty. It is to walk through your day with the dignity of one who already possesses the thing once desired. It is to let go of trying to make things happen and instead move in harmony with the assumption that it already has. And in time, as surely as night follows day, the world will yield. No fact, no condition, no opinion can stand against the power of a sustained assumption. The moment you assume and remain faithful to it, you have stepped into a new timeline, a new identity, and everything in your world must bend to reflect that shift. You do not wait for permission. You do not need validation. You only need to believe. Assume it is done. Feel it real and live as though you are already that which you desire to be. For when you do, you call forth that version of yourself from the depths of the invisible, and the world, ever obedient, will dress itself to match your inner conviction. This is the law, and it is always working, whether you use it wisely or not. Wealth is not an accumulation of currency. It is an identity. It is not a condition you stumble upon, nor a destination you one day reach. It is a state of being, a consciousness you must embody. And unless you take on the identity of wealth from within, all your external efforts will either fall short or collapse back into the mold of the self that has not changed. The key to manifestation is not struggle or strategy, but self-concept. You do not attract what you desire, you attract what you are. To become the rich version of yourself, you must begin to walk, speak, and feel as one who is already rich. This is not play acting. This is alignment. If your body language speaks doubt, if your inner conversations echo lack, if your expectations remain small, then no matter how much you wish for more, your reality will obey your inner image. Every outer condition is a servant of the self you inwardly accept. A man may work 10 hours a day chasing wealth, but if he still calls himself poor in imagination, his labor is in vain. Another may sit still, invisible to the world, and yet money finds him. Opportunities arrive and success unfolds, because he already became in consciousness what others are still striving to achieve. This is the paradox the world cannot grasp. You must be the thing before the world reveals it. Self-definition is the root of transformation. The moment you dare to redefine yourself, the entire structure of your world must respond. It is not about pretending to be someone else. It is about acknowledging the truth that has always been waiting to be accepted. When you say, "I am rich," and feel it, not just as words, but as a felt reality, you shift timelines. You create a new future by changing the one living in you now. There is no need to consult your bank account to confirm this truth. The account only tells you who you were. Your identity tells you who you are becoming. You are not limited by the evidence of today. You are empowered by the assumption of who you choose to be. Identity is not built by chance. It is forged by inner agreement. If you continue to see yourself as small, overlooked, or lacking, no amount of education or effort will rewrite that. The world cannot give you what you do not first give yourself in imagination. The moment you say, "This is who I am now," with full conviction, the doors begin to open. Not because the world changes, but because you change your relationship with it. A rich man sees opportunities where a poor man sees problems. A wealthy consciousness recognizes abundance in silence, in solitude, in the stillness of thought. It does not wait to be affirmed. It is self-confirming. And that confidence radiates into every interaction, shaping the outcomes accordingly. To build this identity, you must become sensitive to your thoughts, your posture, your assumptions. What do you expect when you enter a room? What kind of treatment do you accept from others? How do you speak about money, about yourself, about your future? All these are indicators of the identity you truly live from. And life is only ever echoing that identity back to you in form. This shift does not require fanfare. It requires consistency, a quiet inner decision to no longer live as the former self. You must shed the skin of the struggler, the warrior, the doubter, and take up the presence of the one who already has. There is no need to announce it. The world will feel it. It will meet you differently. The same people, the same city, the same routines will begin to behave in a new way because they are responding to the new vibration you emit. You must embody the wealth before the wealth appears. Feel yourself already in the home, driving the car, walking through the life of ease and freedom, not with longing, but with ownership, not as a distant fantasy, but as the natural expression of who you are. The more normal it becomes within, the more inevitable it becomes without. This is not arrogance. This is not delusion. This is divine memory, remembering the self that always existed beneath the layers of doubt. You cannot attract a life you are unwilling to identify with. If you desire luxury, expansion, freedom, you must marry those qualities inwardly, live with them in imagination until they become indistinguishable from your truth. Let your internal conversations change. Let your emotional set point rise. Let your responses shift from anxiety to calm assurance, and soon you will see the outer life begin to reflect that inner certainty. The change begins in silence, in solitude, in stillness. You close your eyes and become, not later, not after the promotion, not once the loan is paid, now. You become in feeling, in vision, in tone, and when you open your eyes, you do not break the spell, you sustain it. You walk as the one who already is, and in doing so, you collapse the distance between desire and fulfillment. For all that you see is responding not to what you wish, but to who you are being. Time, as most perceive it, is a barrier, a delay, a distance between who they are and who they desire to be. But in truth, time is not a wall, it is a mirror. It does not create, it reflects. And it reflects not what you wait for, but what you accept now. You do not travel through time to arrive at your manifestation. You collapse time through assumption. The moment you live in the end, time bends to match your state. The rich version of you is not somewhere in the future waiting for you to earn your way toward it. That version of you exists now, fully formed, complete in consciousness, available through the portal of imagination. To say, one day I will be wealthy, is to lock wealth outside of now. And what is kept out of now is kept out of experience. You do not manifest what you will be. You manifest what you are. Not what you hope for, but what you identify with in this moment. Time only serves to arrange the outer echoes of your inner change. When you change states, when you move into the vibration of one who already has, time becomes an obedient servant. It lines up people, opportunities, meetings, and outcomes with mathematical precision. Not because you're trying to make it happen, but because you have already received in consciousness what was once sought through effort. The delay is never in time, the delay is in identity. The longer you define yourself by what is missing, the longer time will reflect that absence. But the moment you shift into being, the moment you say, this is already mine, and feel the truth of it without resistance, then time has no choice but to yield. It must echo your assumption. It must bring you the evidence of your inner conviction. Because time is not linear, it is responsive. All versions of you exist in parallel states. The version of you who is broke, confused, and struggling exists now. But so too does the version of you who is wealthy, free, and fulfilled. These are not future selves. These are present realities, held within the infinite field of potential. Imagination is the key that unlocks them. Feeling is the door you walk through. When you shift into the end state and live from it, you draw the corresponding timeline into your world. People think manifestation takes time, but it only takes alignment. Time is the illusion that creates space between you and your desire, but the truth is that distance is only in thought. If you remove the idea that it is far, you also remove the delay. This is why some receive overnight and others wait for years. The difference is not in effort, it is in acceptance. The one who lives in the end eliminates the need to wait. They bring the future into the now by embodying its frequency. The body responds, the mind adapts, circumstances shift. Because the outer world is always in motion to accommodate the inner world, the universe is not responding to your future self. It is responding to your current vibration. So when you walk as if it is already done, speak as if you already have, feel as though it could not be otherwise, then you invite time to rearrange itself around your certainty. Do not measure your progress by clocks or calendars. Do not wait until the end of the month or the next paycheck to believe in your wealth. Those are markers of the past. Live now as if it were already here, and if you do so consistently, time will seem to speed up, not because the days change, but because your inner rhythm no longer aligns with delay. You are the one who decides how long it takes. You are the one who assigns meaning to the calendar. But when you transcend the need for it to happen later and bring it into the now through belief, you enter the space where miracles dwell. In that space, the improbable becomes natural, the impossible becomes ordinary, because nothing is bound by time except your mind. Live in the now and live from the end, not in theory, but in feeling. Practice it when you rise, practice it when you speak, practice it when you sit quietly and envision your world. Say to yourself, I am already that, and not as a wish, but as a knowing. Time will bow to that state. The world will comply. And what once seemed distant will arrive, not because it traveled to you, but because you arrived in the place where it always was, within. You do not chase time, you master it. You do not wait for wealth, you become the one who already is. And in doing so, you eliminate the wait. You return home to the self that always was rich, always was whole, always was complete. This is not a journey forward, it is a return inward. And it is here, in this eternal now, that your richest life begins to unfold. To persist in the assumption, even when everything around you seems to deny it, is the supreme discipline. The outer world is not instant in its response. There is often a lag between what you accept in imagination and what you witness in fact. And in that delay lies the greatest test. Not of the world's loyalty, but of your own. Will you persist in the unseen? Will you remain faithful to the state you have assumed, even when reality contradicts it? That is the true labor of manifestation. Not effort in the physical world, but unwavering allegiance to the invisible. You must remember, the moment you assume a new state of being, be it wealth, freedom, or love, you set a new chain of causation in motion. The bridge of incidents, often strange and unpredictable, begins to unfold. You cannot always see how it is happening. You may not recognize the pieces as they fall into place, but everything, even seeming setbacks or delays, is part of that movement toward fulfillment. Your only task is to remain inside the feeling that it is already done. The world will test your conviction. It will show you appearances to tempt you back into your old self. Your senses will argue. Your bank statement may still reflect the past. But none of these things are real causes. They are echoes. And echoes do not shape the voice. They only repeat it. If you stop speaking the truth in imagination, the echo dies. But if you continue, if you persist, the new sound eventually becomes the dominant reality. Persistence is not force, it is not emotional strain, it is gentle, quiet, and determined repetition of identity. When you imagine yourself as wealthy and return to that assumption daily, regardless of what the outer world does, you are solidifying a new frequency. That frequency, once stabilized, becomes a magnet for corresponding facts. But the stabilization happens through your loyalty to the unseen, through your refusal to waver in the face of appearances. Many people assume a state for a day or a week and then collapse back into old habits. They look for signs too soon. They search the mirror of the world before the reflection has time to change. And when they do not see evidence immediately, they call it failure. But the law does not fail. The only failure is the abandonment of your assumption. If you could only hold the state as naturally as breathing, the world would conform without struggle. The feeling of wealth must become your resting place, your emotional home. You return to it not once but continually until it is more familiar than lack ever was. You think from it, not of it. You act as if it were your foundation, not your goal. And over time, you begin to notice subtle shifts. People respond to you differently. Ideas come unbidden. Synchronicities lie in your path. These are not coincidences. They are the evidence of your inner world crystallizing into form. Do not confuse stillness with inactivity. In imagination, you are always active. You are always assuming something. Even when nothing seems to be happening outwardly, something is being built inwardly. The assumption you persist in will solidify into circumstance, just as surely as a seed planted in circumstance. Just as surely as a seed planted in fertile soil will push through the earth in time. But if you dig it up every few days to check its growth, it cannot take root. So too with your assumed state. Let it settle. Let it grow in silence. Persistence does not mean pretending that all is perfect while suppressing your feelings. It means choosing a new dominant feeling. When old thoughts arise, acknowledge them, but return to your chosen state. Do not fight them. Transcend them. Say to yourself, that may have been me yesterday, but today I know who I am. The new self must be watered daily with belief, attention, and emotional energy. And the longer you persist, the deeper the roots take hold. It is through repetition that identity is born. You did not become who you are in a day. You became through patterns. Now you are asked to form new ones. You must walk differently, not because someone told you to, but because the version of you you now embody walks differently. Your posture changes, your tone shifts, your expectations rise, not out of effort, but out of identity. You are no longer the one waiting. You are the one who has received. Even when no one understands you, even when it seems irrational to others, you persist. You carry the unseen within you with reverence. You do not explain it, you do not defend it, you simply live it. And eventually those around you will marvel at how your life changed. They will ask how it happened, and you will know it happened in silence. It happened in imagination. It happened because you persisted when no one else saw it but you. That is the nature of all creation. It begins within. It is nurtured in quiet confidence. It is protected by persistence. And then, without warning, it bursts into view, not as a surprise, but as something you have already lived 1,000 times in feeling. The outer result is merely the final echo of a long-held truth, and it always was yours. What you are living now is not the present. It is the shadow of a state once assumed. Your current conditions, financial, emotional, relational, are not the origin of your experience. They are the echo of an older self-image. Every outer fact, every bank balance, every opportunity gained or lost is simply the physical reflection of what you once believed to be true about yourself. To look at your life today and judge your potential from it is to misread reality entirely. You are never bound by what you see. You are bound only by what you accept. This moment, as you see it, is the result of a prior assumption. It is the harvest of what you once believed and sustained, consciously or unconsciously. If it is beautiful, rejoice and continue in your assumption. If it is lacking, let it go, not with resistance, but with understanding. For nothing you see is permanent, nothing you touch is the cause. All form flows from consciousness, and as consciousness shifts, so too must the form it animates. You do not need to fight the present. You do not need to battle with what appears. The wiser move is to see the present for what it is, an echo, and to go back to the source, and the source is always within. Change does not begin at the level of the result. It begins in the realm of being. When you change the self you identify with, the world begins to lose its power over you. You stop reacting to conditions and begin shaping them. The version of you that lives in freedom, wealth, and inner peace already exists. It is not a goal to be reached, but a state to be claimed. That version of you is not in the making, it is eternal. You access it not by effort, but by acceptance. And once accepted, that state begins to express itself in the world around you. It moves through your words, your actions, your tone, and eventually through your environment. The change is gradual at times, but it is always certain. The old self may rise again. Doubt may whisper. Facts may present themselves to challenge your decision. But understand this, the only power they hold is the power you give them. Your current reality is nothing more than the lingering consequence of a thought sustained long enough to harden into experience. If you wish to escape it, you must stop feeding it with your attention. Withdraw the energy of belief and it begins to dissolve. You are not here to patch the old self or fix the past. You are here to remember the truth, that you are always becoming who you choose to be, that every moment offers a doorway into a new identity. You need not earn your way to the new self. You need only assume it and live from it as if no other version ever existed. When you do this sincerely, the old self loses momentum. Its reflection fades, and the world, being the mirror it is, begins to display your new self back to you. You cannot take the old state into the new reality. You must release it, not with resistance, but with indifference. You must let it fall away like an outdated garment. There is no need to grieve the former version of yourself, nor to analyze it into submission. Simply rise. Rise in thought, in feeling, in assumption. Let the new self occupy the throne of your imagination. Let it reign there silently and consistently, and the outer world will soon declare what the inner world has long known. Do not expect the new state to arrive with a loud announcement. Often it appears subtly, in changed conversations, in unexpected compliments, in moments of clarity, in flashes of courage. These are the signs of a new self emerging. Trust them, and do not return to the old echoes simply because they are familiar. They have nothing new to offer. Their only life is the one you grant through remembrance. Instead, remember the new. Wake up each morning as the one who already is. Speak from that place. Think from that place. Feel from that place. When worry tries to return, gently turn away. When fear knocks, do not answer. The world has no choice but to conform to the state you remain faithful to. You are not the one begging for a new life. You are the one who has already entered it. This is the final secret, that life does not give you what you want, it gives you what you are. And you are always being someone in imagination. The only question is, who? If you are not living the life you desire, then look not at the world but at the self you are sustaining within. Change that, and everything must follow. The end is never found in the future. It is found in the now. And when you live in the end, the world begins to reveal the riches that were always waiting to be claimed. So now, the question is no longer when it will happen. The only question that remains is, will you dare to live as though it already has? For the world does not move first, you do. The shift you seek will not come from the world. It will come through you. And you change not by striving, but by identity. You have been given the greatest gift, the ability to choose your state, to assume your higher self, and to live in the end before the evidence appears. The rich version of you is not a dream. It is a reality waiting for your permission. And the moment you inhabit that version of yourself in imagination, feeling, and faith, the world must make room for it. Remain faithful. Do not fall for appearances. Do not return to your former self for comfort. The version of you that already exists, the one living in peace, prosperity, and power, is real. And the bridge between where you stand and where that version resides is assumption, persistence, and identity. Live in the end, not for a moment, but as a way of being. Walk as though you have already received. Think as one who no longer needs to beg. Feel as though there is nothing more to attain, only to express. And when you do, your world will not merely improve, it will be reborn in your image. For that which you are conscious of being, you shall be, and what you are, the world must reflect fully, inevitably.